Hi, good afternoon, all. This is Vishal Singhal from Cellstat. Today we have Mr. Manjeet Singh from Perth, Australia, all the way there. And we were just talking as to what's the scenario there, and he says schools have opened there. So that's we were just chatting how his daughter is coping up, and he says very happy. So I hope same thing happens to all of us. Everybody is happy, hale, and hearty. And let's get to the topic. So he's taking us through techniques in preparing data for machine learning, which is an important topic for everybody, whether practicing or learning AI enthusiast people. So I'll hand over the controls to Manjeet. He's AI intern with us and also exploring creating some products in Australia in Vision. So over to you, Manjeet.
Thank you, Vish.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Vishal. In today's session, we are going to cover the importance of data preparation in machine learning, and it is very important topic because most of the data scientists spend a lot of time in preparing data. Around more than 50% of time is spent in preparing data. So let's start with the machine learning process. Machine learning is the process that power many of the services we use today. Recommendation systems like those on Netflix, YouTube, and Spotify, social media feeds like Facebook and Twitter, voice assistants like Siri and Alexa. Machine learning algorithm use statistics to find patterns in data, and data here encompasses a lot of things: number, word, click, images. If it can be digitally stored, it can be fed into machine learning algorithm. During the process of building analytical model using machine learning, the data is collected from various sources such as file, database, sensor, and much more. But the collected data cannot be used directly for performing the analysis process. Therefore, to solve this problem, data preparation is done. Certain steps are executed to convert the data into small, clean data set. This technique is performed before the execution of prediction. We are going to cover construct data and data transformation. In construct data, we define data required, collect raw data, identify features, and label sources. In data transformation, we do feature engineering, scaling, normalizing, decomposition, and aggregation. Garbage in, garbage out. Adage applies to machine learning also. After all, your model is only as good as your data. But how do you measure your data set quality and improve it? And how much data do you need to get useful results? The answer depends upon the type of problem we are solving. Let's take the size of the data as a rough rule of thumb. Your model should train on at least an order of magnitude more examples than trainable parameters. And if we talk about quality of data set, it's of no use having a lot of data if it's a bad data. Quality matters too. Your analysis is as good as your data. Even if we have a perfect model, but our data is garbage, we cannot have a very good output. So to deal with, we do data processing. In real world, data are highly susceptible to noise, missing and inconsistent data due to their typical huge size and their likely origin from multiple heterogeneous sources. The data we acquire will likely have many problems. Low quality data will lead to low quality prediction. The goal of data preparation is to create the data that will be used for analysis. There are several data processing techniques we are going to use: data cleaning, data integration, data reduction, data transformation. In data cleaning can be applied to remove noise and correct inconsistency in data. Data integration merges data from multiple sources into a coherent data store. Data reduction can reduce data size by, for instance, aggregating and eliminating redundant features or clustering. Data transformation may be applied where data are scaled to fall within a smaller range like 0.0 to 1.0. This can improve the accuracy and efficiency of algorithm involving distant measurements. Data preparation is very important part of machine learning process. It can be a tedious process, but it is a crucial step. If we do not spend the time and effort to create good data for the analysis, we will not get good result, no matter how sophisticated the analysis techniques we are using. Always remember, garbage in, garbage out. So take the time to prepare your data if you want good analysis result. Let's start with missing data. A very common data quality issue is missing data. Recall that a sample in your dataset typically contain several variables or features like name, age, and income. For some sample, some of these variables may not have a value. They are referred to as a missing value in data. Missing values are also referred to as NA for not available. Why you have a missing values in your data? If you have an optional field in your data set, for example, the field like age, which is optional in survey. Also, many people may choose not to provide a response for income, and you will end up with missing values for variable income in your data set. In some cases, a variable may not be applicable to all cases. For example, income may not be applicable to people who are retired, unemployed, or to children. So you will not have an entry for income in your sample. You may you may also have a missing value due to data collecting device that malfunction, a network problem that affect how the data was transmitted, or sometimes else that goes wrong during the data collection process itself, or the process of transmitting the data or storing the data. There are some techniques to handle missing data. First is like ignoring the missing value. Whenever we encounter missing data in the data set, we can remove the row or column of data depending on our need. This method is known to be efficient, but it shouldn't be performed if there are a lot of missing values in the data set. Other technique like filling or impute the missing values. Whenever we encounter missing data in the data set, then we can fill the missing data manually, most commonly with mean or median or highest frequency value. So let's take an example and look at the code. We are using a missing number, and the data set is Titanic test CSV. It's better to visualize your data. It gives a much more clear image of what is going behind the data. If we make an matrix of this Titanic test CSV or Titanic data set, we can clearly see the cabin. The white lines are the missing data. We can clearly see the cabin column has lot of missing data, and age has some of the data missing as compared to fair. And if we put a bar plot, it is clearly showing, okay, in cabin column we have only 91 data entries, rest of the missing values. In this case, it's better to delete this column, because if we look at the average or average as compared to the other columns, the data value is very less. How we can do that? In a data frame, we use a drop command to delete the cabin column. Access mean we are deleting a whole column instead of a row, because if we delete a row, lots of data will be lost. And if we plot a bar graph again, our cabin data is missing. We have deleted the column. Now we're left with age and where we need to be dealt with. Another technique for missing value we can do is median. We calculate the median. Suppose now we have to fill the age. So we calculate the median of it and fill the missing rows with that median. Instead of filling the age with any random variable, it's better to do with the median or node, depending upon your column attribute. Again, we place the bar graph. Now we have the age, 418 rows again. Now we left with the fair. In fair, we chose, okay, instead of median, the most frequent value, we replace the missing value, missing row, with the most frequent one. And if we place again our bar graph, we have all the rows now. It's better, instead of providing a missing values or filling it with the zero, it's better to have all the columns, rows should have some values by collecting a median or mean, which we can fed into a machine learning process. Feature scaling. Before covering other data preparation step, we need to understand few concepts like feature scaling. Feature scaling involves changing the value range of values for a feature of to another specified range. This is done to avoid allowing features with very large values to dominate the analysis result. For example, if your dataset has both width and height as feature, the magnitude of the weight scale value, which are in kilogram, will be much larger than the magnitude of the height value, which are in the meters. So scaling both features to a common value range will make the contribution for both weight and height equal. Feature scaling can vary your result a lot while using certain algorithm and have a minimal or no effect in others. So in this, we are just looking at, okay, apple, and we try to compare it with the strawberry. Both are fruits, but in the machine learning, when we need to compare them, we have to scale them. So with this, we mean that, okay, they have to be on the same scale. To eliminate this problem, we use some techniques called normalization and standardization. Feature scaling means converting floating point feature values from their natural range into a standard scale ranging from 0 to 1 or sometimes -1 to 1. One technique is standardization, another is normalization, which we generally use for feature scaling. In standardization, the formula is given by new value, original value minus mean and divided by standard deviation. In normalization, the same features, we try to scale it between 0 and 1, retaining their proper proportion range to each other. The formula for which is original value minus minimum x and max x and minimum x. And this, with this chart, we can say, okay, if the input is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and if we apply standardization and min max normalization, the output is very different. Standardizing the features so they are centered around 0 and standard deviation is 1. is not only important if we're comparing the measurement that have a different units, but it also a general required for many machine learning algorithm. The next is data cleaning, handling noisy data. Let's see how to handle noisy data. What is noise? Noise is a random Noise is a random error or variance in a measured variable. Noise refers to the anything that can distort our data. It can be introduced during the data collection process or data transmission process. As example is buzzing sound in the background when audio message is recorded due to background noise or faulty microscope. Another example is outliers. They are data sample with values that are considerably different than the rest of the other data samples in the dataset. An example scenario that can create outliers is when there is a sense of failure that causes many values being recorded to be much higher or lower than normal. In this case, you want to remove the outliers from your data. In other application, however, such as fraud detection, outliers are the important samples that should be examined very closely. So depending upon the application, outliers may be removed or be kept for further analysis. If we simply ignore these data quality issues, an analysis that is performed will produce misleading result. Some of the way of handling a noise data is binding. One is binding, also known as quantization. It is used for transforming continuous numeric feature into categories. The categories or bin represent a specific degree of intensity and hence a specific range of continuous numeric value fall into it. Smoothing is a technique applied to time series to remove the fine-grained variation between timestamps. Other names given to this techniques are curve fitting or low-pass filtering. It is designed to detect trends in presence of noisy data in cases in which the shape of the trend is unknown. The hope of smoothing is to remove noisy and better expose the signal of underlying causal processes. Let's look at the example. The first one we used to handle is binding. We are using a data set from New Coder Survey Data, CSV. Three columns that we are considering is IDX, age, and income. First is there are two types of binding. One is fixed width and second is adaptive binding. Let's look at the fixed width binding. Here, if we take the age, we are distributing in the equal part of 0 to 10 to 20, 20 to 30. There is a fixed width binding we are doing or categorization. We are putting an age into categorization. The other way of doing is binding by rounding. If we divide the age by 10 and making a round of it, then our age lie between 2 for 22, 21 reduced to 2, 40 to 4, like this. Custom age range binding. We can define our age range also to do the categorization 0 to 15, 16 to 30. All the steps what we are doing is manual. The way of doing is we define the bin range, bin names against it, and doing these functions to create a bind. And this is Round wine, 20 age, let's take a 22 age. If we round it, it is residing in the category 2. Our custom is 15 to 30. So this way, instead of giving lot of data, which is of no use, we are putting a range in the machine learning algorithm. Adaptive binding. The drawback in using fixed width binding is that due to us manually dealing with the binding range, we can end up with a very irregular data, which are biased. So if we want to uniform it in our distribution, the adaptive binding we can use. Let's take an example of income, and if we plot the data of income, a bar graph, we can see, okay, this is the distribution. But if we do by uh, binding by, okay, 20,000, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, we will end up with a very unequal uniform distribution. Instead of that, we have defined, okay, let's stay at quantile. We are dividing our data with the 0 to 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1. We are giving a range or percentage in which the data should be divided. After going through all this, the first category we return is only this. Most of the 25% of the data is here. Next 25% here. Next 25, and rest of this. So these categories are equally distributed. This we can do mathematically instead of defining it manually. And we can also customize our labels. We can define 0 to 25, 25 to 40. It's just a customizing our label output. Smoothing. To see this example, we are taking an example of daily total female birth data set. It gives us, okay, in date of birth, it's a date and how many births is taking place, 20, 35, 32, 30, 31, 44. The idea of smoothing, if we plot straight away this graph, we are getting this kind of pattern. It's for the one whole year, 365 rows we have, but we are not able to get any pattern in this. What we do in this case, we try to smooth this graph by using a method. Okay, we are rolling windows. For 5 days, we are taking, suppose we are taking, take 7 days, and we try to take a mean out of it or median. And instead of placing a 7 values, we are just only placing a median of it. For 365 days, then we have 52 weeks, which means we are only using a 52 data set instead of 365. And it will give us a bit smooth graph to see how things are going on. In rolling, this can be done. The window right now, we have taken a window of 5. Mean it's taking a 5 values and taking a mean of it. Instead of this, if we define 7, the graph is changed. We can see more pattern in it. Now it's taking a 7, initial 7 data and taking a mean of it. By this we can see the smoothing. The next thing is outliers, another noisy data which we have to deal with. In this case, we are taking a Boston data to see how the outliers are. The best way is to see, okay, let's say weighting distance of the five. This is defined as the weighting distance. If we plot a C, we are using a library Seaborn to box plot. And here we clearly see, okay, this is the outlier. Okay, if we place a bar graph, again we can see, okay, here is the outliers. The graphs are very good in visualizing, okay, what is going on with the data. So another different types of graph will give a different visualization. In this, we are using a scatter graph. Here clearly we can see the outliers. So this data we need to deal, okay, we have to remove this data, otherwise it will affect our algorithm. Working with outliers and how we can correct it. We have seen, okay, in standardization, we are standardize our data, which is also called the z-score. We have taken a z-score of all the Boston data. What happened when we take a z-score? Anything greater than 3 is considered as an outlier. If we eliminate the data which is greater than 3 z-score, we can remove our outliers. Like in an example here, if we take a row of 55, then we have outlier 3.35. We can easily remove by comparing it, removing the extra thresholds. Here we are only printing a shape before outlier and after removing the outliers. Again, if we plot the graph, we can see it here, the outliers are removed. And this is just to compare again with outliers and without outliers. The next next type of data is categorical data. A categorical variable is a variable sorry, when should we use smoothing? Actually, let's see. When we use smoothing when we want to see the trend in the data. In this case, if we can't get a good trend in. We can't see, okay, what's the trend is. It's all zigzag thing is there, but we cannot place a very good, can get a very good trend from it. Just to give an overview what the trend is going on, we use a smoothing feature. Okay, let's start with this categorical. For example, the variable we have taken here as a weather may take a sunny, cloudy, snowy, rainy, windy, and icy. But there is no comparison among them. Okay, they are all of equal. We cannot say sunny is better than cloudy is better than snowy. It's depend upon personal choices. But in if we take as a data, there is no relationship between them. Okay, sunny is greater than cloudy is greater than snowy. But other type of data which make in some sense of order is excel, small, medium, large. There is some order in it. So there is a different way of handling it, and they have different impact on the algorithms. Let's see this. We are taking a very simple data, okay, color, red, blue, red, yellow, blue, red. Again, there is no comparison. Blue is better than red is better than yellow. In case if we look at the algorithms, yeah, personal choice is different, but for algo there is no relationship in them. So instead of this, machine learning require numeric data, not these kind of labels, red, blue. One way of doing it, classic way of doing is replace red with 0, blue with 1, yellow with 3. We can use it with label encoder. But the problem is, if we look at one is from the machine learning point of view, still there is a mathematically 1 is greater than 0, 2 is greater than 1. The algos take it very differently. They will see a relationship. Okay, the red is better. Red is smaller than blue. Blue is uh, yellow is smaller than blue. They will see some comparison. But yeah, right now we are just saying, okay, how we can convert um, alphabetical data into a numerical data. We will see later on, okay, how to deal with that. There is no comparison. Second is ordinal. If we use the ordinal encoder, simply with it, the color is changed from 1. Red is changed to 1, blue changed to 2, and yellow to 3. Again, there is a comparison will be there. Okay, 1 is greater or 2 is greater. To deal with this problem, we have one hot encoder where one column is distributed into depending upon how many values we have in a this column, unique values. In this case, we have 3 unique values. Now we have a 3 columns instead of 1. We have a 3 column, and every column, suppose in this case, this represent red. The color 1 is 1, rest of is 0. This will represent blue, rest is 0. This is red, this is yellow. So if we have 5 colors or 5 unique values, we will have 5 columns in this case. And only the value, like suppose column 1 which will represent red have 1, the rest of them will have a 0 values. In case of binary, the data is 1 is converted into a binary data set, 2 is converted into 1 0. This is binary. Okay, and again 1, this is 3. So instead of one hot code, we are using a binary to represent this kind of data. The problem, we cannot say problem, but yeah, in this the number of columns increase exponentially. Okay, if we have 5 unique thing, 5 columns. If we have 10 columns. In case of binary, the number of columns are not increased in this rate. And base n, here we are taking a base of 2. Again, base 2 is equal to um, binary. If we take base 1, which is one hot code, base 2 is binary thing. We can change base 3, base 4, base 7, but hardly we use that. But yeah, there is another way of handling the categorical data. Any question?
So no questions as of now. Audience, please ask any questions you have. So Manjeet, have you finished your presentation?
No, not yet. There is a few
So,
more things.
so you go ahead. If any questions come in, I'll send it to you.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. So before going, another very crucial topic in data preparation is principal component analysis. But before that, we need to discuss first what is curse of dimensionality. This is very important concept in data preparation, but we want to use, if we have a data, we want to use as many features as possible to capture the characteristics of data, but also don't want the dimension data to be too high. As the dimensionality increase, the problem space we are looking at increase requires sustainably more instance to adequately samples of that space. Suppose in this case, if it's a one dimensional and we are considering it's a equally divided data, so it's only we are one dimensional for data, and the complexity increase if we move to the two dimensional. Now we have a nine things to cover. If the dimensionality increased to 3D, we can see the complexity increasing. We need a very exponentially large number of training data points to cover this. So what we try to do, reduce the dimensionality, which mean in other way, very simply, if we take try to reduce the number of columns. There is a way of doing it. Let's explore that. This is called principal component analysis. The goal of PCA is to map the data from the original high dimensional space to a lower dimensional space that capture as much of the variation in the data as possible. In other words, PCA aims to find the most useful subset of dimension to summarize the data. This plot illustrates the idea behind PCA. Here we have a data sample in two-dimensional space that is defined by X and Y axis. You can see that most of the variation in data lie along the red line. This means the data samples are best differentiated among this dimension because they are spread out, not clumps together among this dimension. This dimension indicated by the red line is the first principal component labeled as PC1. It captures the large amount of variance along a single dimension in data. The next principal component is determined by looking in the direction that is orthogonal, means perpendicular, to the first principal component, which captures the next largest amount of variance in the data. This second principal component is called PC2. We try to understand with a very simple example. Suppose in XY, a Cartesian graph, the data is distributed like this. And if we place a horizontal like this, line like this, and try to place data in on this line, it is not spreaded so much as compared to if we put a line like this and try to put all the data on this. Here we can see the maximum variance and we can in the data. So this line, this will be selected as a PC1 and this will be selected as a PC2. We are looking for the direction where the data is more spread out. So when we get a set of data points, we can reconstruct the set into eigenvectors and eigenvalues. Eigenvectors and values exist in pair. Every eigenvector has a corresponding eigenvalues. An eigenvector is a direction. In the example above, the eigenvector has the direction of the line, vertical, horizontal, 45-degree. It can be anything depending upon how our data is distributed. The eigenvalue is the number telling us how much variance there is in the data in that direction. The eigenvector with the highest eigenvalue is therefore the principal component. Okay, the amount of eigenvector values that exist equal the number of dimension the data set we have. Suppose we have this data is two-dimensional. Thus, eigenvector and eigenvalues we will be having a 2. Again here, the data is spread in x and y axis like this. After finding PC1 and PC2, what PCA do? It's realign. Now the realign to the PC1 and PC2 instead of a x and y, original x and y. Let's see an example of PCA. We are using a low digit data set. It's a function actually. We are using a digit data set, which is a 64-dimensional data set. And we are doing PCA2, means from 64 dimension, we are reducing it to 2 dimensions. First benefit of one of the benefit of doing a PCA is we can visualize our data set. It will give us a very clear picture, okay, how the data is distributed among. So the rows is not changed, but the number of columns has changed from 64 to 62 after doing the PCA. And to do 64, make a graph of 64 is very difficult, not possible. Imaging is very difficult. So by reducing it to 2 dimension, we can see, okay, we can put a graph now and we can see our data. 0 is distributed here to just to get a visualization of it. Another step is another thing we can do with the PCA is how many out of 64, how many make are relevant columns. Suppose if we take 10 columns are relevant to most of the features that we get from for the digit is if we take the 10 best columns, we have a feature collection, okay, 80%, and if we take 40, then we are able to define or make an prediction with the 40 columns only. With this PCA, implementing PCA, we can say, okay, how many columns are actually we require instead of 64. Most of them, okay, if we take 15 columns, which are enough to do the classification. So by this, we are able to reduce the data site from 64 to most relevant 15 or 20, depending, okay, how much percentage you want to give.
So there are two questions, Manjeet.
Yeah.
First is how can we smooth the exponentially growing time series data?
Mm-hmm.
You can answer that because the other question is more longer.
Okay. Look, it's depend upon the relevance. Suppose if we have a 1 year data, like in the case of birth, um, more relevant is to divide into a week. Um, take a mean of 1 week or one month. In a year time, 1 month don't make it, it's very hazy. It will give us a bar graph. So depending upon the data, we have to decide, okay, um, how many days we need to cover or how many things we need to cover. Instead of in 365, 7 make a more sense, weekly make a more sense. In other data, 10 days make a more sense. In a suppose if we are collecting a weather statistic and every minute we are collecting it, it don't make any sense for a year, if we plot a data of every minute, it's better to plot a data of 1 day. So this depend upon your problem and how many data you actually have. I hope,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Next question is, suppose I have ordinal categorical values and
Yeah.
I know its priority level. So
So it,
instead of using level encoding, we can also replace these values with 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Manually also, right? Will it make any difference?
no, in the end, you're doing it manually, but there are libraries to do this. So it's better to do with the library, but don't reinvent the wheel. That's what I say.
Sure.
Technically, it's not going to make any difference to the algorithm, but yeah, you are doing it manually instead of using algorithms already provided level.
Also, I think if there are large data sets, it will be difficult to do them
Yes,
manually anyways.
yes, yes.
Right? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Thank you.
So I'm done with the. I put all this code in GitHub, and I will share it with the Vishal and also on the meetup. The link for it, you can download and explore it. If you have more question, you can email it to me or Vishal. You can take my number. You can write it to me. Anything. All right,
Sure.
Vishal. Any more
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah. Thanks, Ranjit. So, audience, any more questions? We are here for some time. We still have about 5 to 8 minutes time. So, if you have any more questions, you can send them now, or alternatively send them to either of us. So, some are coming. Next is, you have shown level encode and ordinal encode function. What is the difference between the two?
A label encode and
Ordinal encode.
it's starting with 1, and this is starting with 0. But you can change it, okay, where to start with. But yeah, this is the by one of the way of doing it. This is another way of doing it. Technically there is no difference because you can start with the 0 and you can start with the 1. It does not make any difference in if we are taking considering it as a nominal ordinal 1. Yeah, there is a special class given it to ordinal with making make it and start from 1 instead of a 0. That's the main difference in it.
Okay.
Anything
Any
else?
other questions, audience? So I don't see any others, and people have started leaving. So
Okay.
thank you all for joining, and thank you, Manjeet, for sparing time from Australia to deliver this. Hope to
Thank
see you in more webinars soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
have a good day.
You have to be.